Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we cut through the noise to get you truly well informed on the topics shaping our digital lives.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're plunging headfirst into a world you interact with dozens, maybe even hundreds of times every single day. I'm talking about mobile apps. You tap, you swipe, you connect, manage your money, talk to loved ones, all through these incredible pocket-sized programs.
Yeah, they're everywhere. Billions of devices globally, millions of apps running. It's just staggering.
It really is. There's this constant hum of digital activity right in your pocket. But how often do you truly pause to consider the intricate, often hidden systems that power them and, crucially, what keeps them safe?
It's a critical question, definitely. And one that the seamless experience of our phones often leads us to overlook.
Right. It just works.
Exactly. What's truly fascinating here is how that effortless tap on an icon actually kicks off this deeply complex underlying architecture. It's a sophisticated dance between software, hardware, networks, things most of us never even glimpse.
And that's precisely why we're here today. Our mission is to take a deep dive into the fascinating, complex, and sometimes alarming world of mobile application security. We've pulled together a stack of really authoritative sources, everything from the crucial OWASP frameworks to official developer guides from Apple and Google, plus the very latest cybersecurity reports to give you that shortcut to being truly well-informed.
And by the end of this journey, you'll not only understand the critical security layers protecting your mobile life, but you'll also gain some unique insights, hopefully, into how to navigate this dynamic digital landscape with greater awareness.
We promise those aha moments, the ones that turn complex info into memorable, maybe even actionable knowledge.
That's the goal.
So get ready to see your phone and the apps on it in a whole new security-minded light. Let's unpack this. Okay, so let's start by peeling back that first layer. When you tap an icon on your screen, it feels like a simple, self-contained program running right there. But I'm guessing what's happening under the hood is far more intricate than most of us imagine.
Oh, you're absolutely right. The core insight to grasp, really, is that mobile apps are rarely isolated islands.
Okay.
While they are indeed software programs running on your specific Android or iOS device, their power and, frankly, their vulnerability stems from their constant connection.
Connection to what? The internet.
Mostly, yes. They primarily operate via what's called a client-server model. Your app, right there on your device, acts as the client.
Got it.
And it's almost constantly communicating with remote back-end servers. This communication handles, well, everything. Retrieving data, processing requests, and of course, authenticating your identity.
So it's not just a self-contained program at all. It's more like a window into this huge distributed system.
Precisely.
That constant communication, though, it sounds like it could be a major Achilles heel. What's the biggest vulnerability that opens up when an app is constantly talking to remote servers rather than just doing its work locally?
Well, it means a huge portion of the processing, the actual data storage, and those vital authentication steps often happen remotely, not just within your phone.
Right, on those servers.
Exactly. This continuous back and forth introduces numerous points where data is in transit, where authentication logic lives, where information is stored sometimes locally, often remotely. And each of these interaction points is a potential point of failure, a doorway for an attacker if it's not meticulously secured.
And these are real programs, complex ones.
Oh, yeah. Built with languages like Java or Kotlin for Android or Swift and Objective-C for iOS. Every single line of code plays a role in this intricate dance.
And before an app even reaches your phone, it goes through this surprisingly lengthy and rigorous journey, or at least it should, right? We're talking about the mobile app development lifecycle, the MADLC.
Yes, the MADLC.
And this isn't just about making it work. Security needs to be baked in from the very start, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's a critical insight we'll keep coming back to. This lifecycle typically spans 7 distinct phases. It kicks off with conceptualization and planning.
Okay, the idea phase.
Right. Developers brainstorm the app's purpose, define its target audience, set clear goals. Think of it like designing the blueprint for a complex building.
Makes sense.
Then it moves into wireframing and prototyping. This is where tools like Adobe XD or Figma come in handy. Designers create basic visual layouts like digital sketches and simulate user interactions.
To get early feedback. See how it feels.
Exactly. Gather early feedback on how the app will feel and flow. Get the user experience direction right.
Which is really important for making sure the app is intuitive. Then comes the actual design phase, polishing the UI UX, and then the heavy lifting. the development phase. That's where the actual coding happens. And our sources highlight that this is where the app's layered architecture really takes shape.
That's right. And the development process itself, I mean, even for what seems like a simple app, it's a massive undertaking.
Expensive, I bet.
Very. Our sources indicate costs can range from, say, $50,000 to literally millions of dollars.
Wow.
And timelines. Months, maybe even years, depending on complexity. Once the core development is done, there's rigorous testing for functionality, performance, and, crucially, security. Then comes deployment to the app stores, and finally, ongoing maintenance and updates.
So it's never really done.
Not at all. It's not a set-it-and-forget-it process.
Yeah.
And skipping or rushing any of these phases, incredibly risky. It can embed vulnerabilities deep within the app's core, making them significantly harder and far more costly to find and fix later.
Okay, so when developers start this journey, they face a really fundamental choice. What kind of app do they actually build? Native, hybrid, or cross-platform? You hear these terms thrown around.
Yes, and each has its own flavor, so to speak, and its own set of security implications.
How so?
Well, this choice, which might initially seem to be just about development efficiency or cost, is actually a deeply strategic security decision.
Really? Okay.
Take native app development. This means building specifically for a single platform using Swift or Objective-C for iOS or Java Kotlin for Android.
Tailor-made.
Exactly. This approach offers premium performance, the most seamless integration with device features like, say, Apple's Secure Enclave, and typically the highest level of inherent security. Why? Because it can fully leverage all the built-in OS protections.
Okay. Sounds great. What's the catch?
The main trade-off is it requires separate code bases for each platform. So you're essentially building two entirely distinct applications. That makes it more time-consuming and costly to develop and maintain.
Right. Double the work in some ways.
Pretty much. Then you have hybrid apps. These leverage web technologies, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, basically wrapped inside a native shell.
Like a mini website inside an app?
Sort of, yeah. This means faster development, a single code base, which can certainly be cheaper, but their performance might not be quite as snappy as native apps.
Good security.
Their security relies very heavily on robust web security practices because, like you said, they're essentially running a mini browser within your app.
Okay. And the third option, cross-platform development. Frameworks like Flutter, React Native, those seem really popular now.
They are. They try to get the best of both worlds. These frameworks let developers write a single code base that then compiles into native code or renders native UI components across multiple platforms.
So one code base runs everywhere, feels almost native.
That's the promise. Near-native performance, significantly reduced development time, simplified maintenance. The downsides, maybe slightly larger file sizes, and sometimes there are delays in getting access to the absolute newest platform features compared to native.
Okay, but where's the security angle here? You said it was a strategic decision.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting from a security perspective. Both hybrid and cross-platform solutions introduce an abstraction layer between the app itself and the secure native operating system.
An abstraction layer, like a middleman.
Kind of. Think of it like adding another door, maybe a slightly less reinforced one, to a very secure house. Each new door, while convenient for the builders, is another point an intruder might try to exploit. It could potentially bypass some of the incredibly robust built-in security benefits that a purely native implementation would offer.
Ah, I see. So the convenience comes with a potential security trade-off. That's a great way to put it. So no matter the development choice, native, hybrid, cross-platform, what about the internal structure of the app itself? You mentioned a layered architecture earlier.
Yes, absolutely.
What are those layers, and why are they so fundamental for security?
So regardless of the paradigm chosen, most well-engineered mobile apps follow a three-layered approach. It's for organization and security. You have the presentation layer, the business logic layer, and the data access layer.
Okay.
This architectural separation isn't just about good programming practice. It's a critical security measure. It's a fundamental form of defense in depth.
Okay, let's unpack this. The presentation layer, that's literally the face of the app, right? What we see and interact with, buttons, screens.
So it's the user interface, UI, the user experience, UX, all the visual components. From a security standpoint, its role in enforcing core security policies is actually quite minimal.
Why is that important?
Because if an attacker manages to compromise or manipulate just the UI, say, change how something looks, it doesn't automatically mean they've breached the app's fundamental security controls underneath.
Gotcha. Which then brings us to the business logic layer. The app's brain, you called it. This is where the real work happens.
Exactly right. This is where the core functionality resides. The rules, the data processing, the decision-making, navigation, logging, caching, all that
It's
stuff.
like calculating a discount in a shopping app.
Perfect example.
Sure.
For an e-commerce app, this layer would handle calculating discounts, validating user inputs like a shipping address, managing what happens when you add an item to your cart, ensuring smooth navigation between screens. Crucially, this layer is strictly separated from the UI.
And that separation is key for security.
Huge. Because even if the presentation layer were somehow manipulated, the core business rules and operations remain protected if, and this is a big if, they are independently validated. It makes it significantly harder for an attacker to truly understand and manipulate the app's core operations or its intended purpose.
It's like layers of an onion, almost.
We're like having separate bank vaults like we talked about, one for cash, one for documents, one for jewels, instead of just one big safe. This layered defense isn't just good organization. It's defense in depth, forcing attackers to breach multiple distinct barriers.
Okay, and then the third layer, the data access layer, the memory, that sounds like the most sensitive one of all.
It absolutely is, and its security is paramount. This layer is responsible for managing all data storage and retrieval.
Both on the phone and off.
Yes, this could involve local storage on your device using systems like Squalite or Realm on Android or Core Data on iOS. But more commonly nowadays, it involves interacting with remote backend servers via APIs to store and fetch information from the cloud.
And the security here.
Is critical. It dictates how sensitive user information is handled, whether it's stored securely on your device and whether it's transmitted safely to and from the server. A compromise here can directly lead to devastating data breaches and privacy violations.
Okay, so we've established that apps aren't just self-contained programs. They're constantly reaching out, talking to the cloud, as you put it. This ubiquitous client-server communication is what makes so many of our apps powerful, dynamic, but it must introduce a whole new set of security considerations, right?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
Modern apps are almost never self-sufficient. They are clients deeply reliant on robust back-end servers for virtually all their heavy lifting.
Right.
Storing your preferences, performing complex calculations, authenticating your identity, you name it. This interaction primarily happens through what are called application programming interfaces, or APIs.
APIs, right. You hear that term a lot.
Yeah. Most commonly, they use REST over HTTP, with data typically formatted in JSON, simple text-based formats.
And this means that a mobile app security isn't just about what's actually running on your phone. It's a much broader challenge.
What's truly fascinating, and often overlooked, is that mobile app security is fundamentally a full-stack problem.
Full stack, meaning?
Meaning it involves everything, the app on your phone, the front end, the server it talks to, the back end, and the connection between them. Think of it this way. The beautiful user interface of the app on your phone is like the front door of a secure building.
Okay.
But if an attacker can reverse engineer the app, essentially deconstruct it to understand its internal workings.
Which we'll get into later, I assume.
We will. But if they can do that, they can then potentially bypass that front door entirely and interact directly with a vulnerable back-end API.
Like finding a back entrance.
Exactly. If that API has weaknesses, maybe it doesn't check inputs properly, or doesn't enforce who can access what, or doesn't limit how many requests can be made. It could be like finding a secret back alley that leads straight into the vault.
Wow.
And these API vulnerabilities have been the root cause of major data breaches. They allow attackers to request sensitive data directly from the server, like a user's entire friend list, without ever needing to log in through the app's legitimate interface.
Okay, so we've peeled back that first layer, understanding how apps are built, their structure. But beneath that, there's an even more fundamental fortress. The operating system itself. Your phone isn't just glass and silicon. It's a veritable Fort Knox, you said.
Metaphorically speaking, yes. Both Android and iOS are engineered with incredibly sophisticated security models. They're designed to protect you at a deeper level than the apps themselves often can.
All right, let's start with iOS. Apple's known for its focus on security and privacy. What are the key pillars there?
iOS security is deeply rooted in hardware. That's a key design philosophy, providing exceptionally strong isolation. And the undisputed star of the show here is the Secure Enclave.
The Secure Enclave. Heard of it, but what is it exactly?
It's not just software. It's a dedicated, isolated subsystem physically built right into the device's main chip, the system on a chip or SOS.
So it's actual hardware.
Yes, It runs its own tiny operating system, its own microkernel, entirely separate and isolated from the main iOS operating system.
Why? What's the point of that separation?
Extreme isolation. It's specifically designed to handle the most sensitive data imaginable. Think your biometrics like Face ID or Touch ID data, critical encryption keys, Apple Pay transaction data. And crucially, it never exposes this raw data to the main OS or to the cloud.
Wow, so even if the main iOS gets compromised somehow.
That's precisely the point of its design. The secure enclave is engineered to remain isolated and secure, keeping your most critical secrets safe, even from a compromised main operating system. It's like a vault within a vault, running its own security guard, as you said.
That's incredibly powerful. What else does iOS do?
Well, complementing that, iOS utilizes hardware AES-256 encryption for the entire device's storage. The keys for that encryption are also meticulously protected by your passcode and managed by the secure enclave.
Okay, so hardware encryption tied to the enclave.
Right. Then you have application sandboxing. This is a core principle. Each app is isolated in its own secure container. It prevents apps from messing with each other or the core OS without very specific, explicit permission.
Like little walled gardens for each app.
Good analogy. Plus, there are advanced memory protections like address space layout randomization or ASLR.
ASLR, what does that do?
It doesn't just make attacks difficult, it actively shuffles around where key data and code are stored in the device's memory every single time an app runs.
So it's unpredictable.
Highly unpredictable. It's like trying to find a specific book in a library where every time you look away, all the books are instantly rearranged on the shelves. This massively frustrates common memory corruption attacks that rely on knowing exactly where things are supposed to be in memory.
That's clever. Okay, now how does Android approach this? It's a different ecosystem, more open in some ways. Is it a similar hardware-centric model, or does it take a different path?
Android's security model, while also incredibly robust, historically builds more heavily on the Linux kernel's user-based protection system, although it's progressively incorporating more hardware-backed features too.
Okay, so more software-based initially.
Primarily, yes. Its cornerstone is the application sandbox. This means when an app is installed, Android assigns it a unique user ID, a UID, and runs it in its own isolated Linux process.
A unique ID for every app.
Yes, this is fundamental. It ensures each app is securely isolated, preventing one app from maliciously reading another app's data or messing with the core operating system without explicit granular permissions.
And how about managing access to things like the camera or location?
Android uses a multi-layered approach here. There's discretionary access control, DAC, based on those unique UIDs. Then there's mandatory access control, MAC, enforced via Linux, adding another stricter layer of policy-based control.
Layers of control.
Right. And on top of this, since Android 6.0, we have runtime permissions. That's when you, the user, grant or deny access to sensitive features like your camera, location, or contacts as the app needs them. Not just all at once during install. Gives you more control.
I remember that change. It was significant.
It was. And more recent features like scope storage in Android 10 specifically address long-standing vulnerabilities around how apps share files. It shows how both platforms are constantly evolving, adapting their defenses against new threats.
So different approaches, iOS leaning heavily on hardware isolation, Android leveraging the Linux kernel strengths and adding layers, but both clearly put enormous effort into protecting data at the OS level.
Indeed. And a key part of that OS-level protection is providing secure ways to store sensitive data or cryptographic keys right on the device. Both platforms offer native, powerful mechanisms specifically designed for this.
Okay, tell us about these native secure storage solutions. How do they work? Let's start with Android.
On Android, you have the Android Key Store system. This system is designed to securely store cryptographic keys and digital certificates. The crucial detail here is that the actual key material, the secret key itself, never enters the app's own process.
Never. How does the app use it then?
When an app needs to use a key, say, to encrypt some data, it sends the data to a secure system process. That process performs the cryptographic operation using the protected key, keeping the key safely isolated.
Ah, so the key stays hidden away.
Exactly. What's more, these keys can often be down to secure hardware, like a trusted execution environment, or T.
A T.
Think of it as a super secure, isolated area within the phone's main processor. It's designed to run sensitive operations without being vulnerable to the main operating system, even if the OS gets compromised. It's like a fortified bunker inside the phone's main command center.
That sounds incredibly robust, ensuring keys aren't exposed even if the main OS is compromised.
It is. And the key store isn't just passive storage. It's an active defense mechanism. Developers can specify strict authorization policies for how a key could be used.
Like rules for the key?
Precisely. For instance, requiring user authentication via fingerprint or face scan, or maybe a passcode, every single time that specific key is used. This adds a critical layer of control, ensuring sensitive operations require direct user approval.
Okay, very cool. And for iOS, what's their equivalent system?
For iOS, you have the keychain. It functions as a secure database for storing sensitive items, passwords, private keys, certificates, secure notes, and, like the Android system, it's backed by the Secure Enclave, providing that hardware-level protection and robust, policy-based access control.
So similar concept tied into their hardware security model.
Exactly. Both systems are ingeniously designed not only to store secrets securely, but also to enforce strict rules and permissions on how and when those secrets can be accessed and used. It's like that safe we talked about. It locks the key away and has strict rules about its use, even for someone inside the safe.
That's incredibly reassuring knowing these layers are working behind the scenes. But okay, these built-in OS protections are only one piece of the puzzle, right? Developers themselves have a huge, arguably the biggest role to play in building a strong wall around their apps.
Absolutely. It's a shared responsibility, definitely. While the OS provides a strong foundational fortress, developer errors, misconfigurations, or just plain poor security practices are often the most common entry points for attackers.
So the OS can be secure, but the app on top might not be.
Precisely. Developers must adhere to fundamental security principles. Things like least privilege, giving an app or user only the minimum permissions they absolutely need to function, nothing more. And critically, defense in depth, having multiple redundant layers of security, so if one fails, others are there to catch it.
Okay, what are some of those key best practices developers should be implementing, like the must-dos?
A monumental one is robust authentication and authorization. This means implementing multi-factor authentication, MFA, wherever possible to verify user identity. Using secure modern protocols like OAuth 2.0 and OpenID Connect for handling access to APIs. And storing any user credentials securely using those tools we just discussed, like Android's encrypted shared preferences or the iOS keychain.
And the big no-no.
Crucially, developers must never, ever hard-code credentials directly into the app's code. That's like leaving your house key under the doormat. Except in this case, the doormat is public, and millions of people know exactly where to look.
That makes perfect logical sense. But why does it still happen? Is it just developers being rushed, or what's the human factor here?
The human factor is huge. Often it's not malicious intent, it's expediency. Maybe a developer hard-codes a key for a test environment and forgets to remove it before release. Or they use default, well-known credentials provided by a third-party library and just don't change them. Tools can help catch this stuff, but it requires diligence.
Okay, so avoid hard-coded secrets. What else?
Data encryption is vital. For data both at rest on the device, like using strong AES 256 encryption for local databases, and data in transit over networks using modern TLS, like TLS 1.3, for all communications, always.
Encrypt everything sensitive. Got it.
Then input validation and sanitization. This is critical to prevent entire classes of attacks, particularly injection attacks.
Like SQL injection.
Exactly. Yeah. SQL injection, cross-site scripting, XSS, command injection. These happen when an app fails to meticulously check, filter, and properly encode all data that comes from the user or from an external source before processing it or sending it to a backend. Using prepared statements when talking to databases is a key part of this.
I can certainly see how validating every piece of data coming into the app would block a lot of common attacks. It sounds fundamental.
It is foundational. Another key practice is secure communication. Enforcing HTTPS is baseline. And then there's the controversial topic, which we'll definitely get into, of sometimes using certificate pinning to actively prevent man-in-the-middle MIPM attacks.
Okay, we'll flag that one. What else?
Supply chain security is increasingly huge.
Yeah.
Apps rarely use only their own code. They integrate tons of third-party libraries, SDKs, frameworks.
Into code from other companies.
Right. Developers must vet these components rigorously. Maybe use tools like OWASP dependency check to scan for known vulnerabilities, because flaws can easily sneak in through components you didn't even build yourself.
That's a scary thought. You inherit someone else's problems.
It can happen. Finally, runtime protections are essential. This includes things like code obfuscation.
Making the code harder to read if someone reverse engineers it?
Precisely. Using tools like ProGuard for Android or SwiftShield for iOS. and implementing root or jailbreak detection to try and prevent apps from running in environments known to be compromised or insecure.
It sounds like a lot for developers to keep track of.
It is, but adhering strictly to guidelines from organizations like OWASP can significantly reduce an app's exposure to risks, some estimates say by up to 90%. It's a continuous proactive battle against increasingly advanced persistent threats. It's not a one-time checklist.
Okay, so we've talked about the incredible defenses built into our phones and the best practices for developers, but let's be realistic, things can and often do go wrong.
Unfortunately, yes.
The OWASP Mobile Top 10 list, you mentioned OWASP guidelines. This list is essentially a rogues gallery, right? The most dangerous and commonly exploited flaws out there.
That's a good way to put it. The OWASP Mobile Top 10 is an invaluable resource. It's constantly updated by security experts based on real-world data, highlighting the most critical and frequently observed security risks that lead to severe impacts.
So what are some of the critical ones from the latest 2024 update that maybe every developer and frankly every user should be aware of? Let's dig in.
All right, let's hit a few key ones. First, there's M9, insecure data storage. This is pretty straightforward, but incredibly common. It happens when sensitive data passwords, authentication tokens, personal info is stored on the device without proper encryption or robust access controls.
So if an attacker somehow gets physical access to the phone or maybe malware gets on there, they can just scoop up that data easily.
Exactly. The potential impact is direct data breaches, compromised user accounts, leading to identity theft, financial fraud, you name it.
And the fix.
Straightforward, in theory. Use strong encryption, ideally AES 256, and consistently use those platform-specific secure storage mechanisms we discussed earlier, the Android key store, the iOS keychain. They're designed precisely for this.
Okay, M9, insecure storage. What's next?
How about M3? Insecure authentication authorization. This sounds like a really fundamental problem, and it is. It can open the floodgates.
How so? What does it cover?
This category encompasses flaws in how an app verifies who a user is, authentication, or what they're allowed to do, authorization. It can manifest in lots of ways.
The examples.
Maybe the app relies on weak password policies, like allowing simple 4-digit PINs for high-value accounts. Or maybe it has those dreaded hard-coded credentials baked into the app's code. Or, critically, it might fail to perform proper server-side verification of a user's identity or permissions, trusting only client-side checks which are easily bypassed by attackers.
Trusting the app on the phone, which can be manipulated.
Exactly. The impact here is severe. Account takeover, where an attacker impersonates a legitimate user, and privilege escalation, where they gain unauthorized access to features or data they shouldn't have.
And mitigation.
Implement multi-factor authentication, MFA. Ensure all critical authentication and authorization checks happen server-side, not just on the client. And again, never hard-code credentials.
Okay, seems crucial. What about M5? Insecure communication. Sounds almost self-explanatory, but how does this typically get exploited in the wild?
This vulnerability refers to transmitting sensitive data without adequate cryptographic protection, basically, sending stuff unencrypted over the network. This leaves it wide open to eavesdropping and man-in-the-middle MIPM attacks.
How would an attacker do that, like on public Wi-Fi?
That's a classic scenario.
Yeah.
Attackers can set up fake unsecured Wi-Fi hotspots, or they might use techniques like DNS spoofing to redirect your app's traffic through their own servers. Or even tricks like SSL stripping to try and force a secure HTTPS connection down to an unsecure HTTP 1.
Nasty.
Yeah. The impact is direct data interception. An attacker can read or even modify your data as it travels across the network. The solution: robust HTTPS implementation using strong modern TLS protocols like TLS 1.3 and proper server certificate setup. Always encrypt traffic.
Right. Then M4, insufficient input-output validation. This connects back directly to what you mentioned about developer best practices, validating everything.
It's a classic vulnerability for a reason. It's still incredibly common. This arises when an app fails to properly check, sanitize, or encode data that comes from the user or any external source before processing it or sending it to a back-end system.
And this opens the door to
a whole host of injection attacks. SQL injection is the famous one, but also cross-site scripting, XSS, command injection.
Yeah.
Basically, anywhere malicious code can be inserted into input fields and then executed by the app or the server.
What's the impact there?
It can be widespread. Data corruption, stealing session cookies, defacing websites run by the backend, potentially even remote code execution on the server in worst-case scenarios. Mitigation is clear and vital.
Mm.
Rigorously sanitize all inputs and outputs, and always use techniques like prepared statements when interacting with databases to prevent SQL injection specifically.
Okay, one more from the list. M7, insufficient binary protections. What does that cover and why is it so dangerous?
This is about the lack of sufficient protection against reverse engineering and code tampering. Mobile app binaries, the compiled app package, especially Android APKs, and to a lesser extent, iOS IPAs can be relatively easily decompiled back into something resembling human-readable code.
So attackers can literally read the app's code.
Often, yes, or at least understand its structure and logic. Attackers use readily available tools to do this. They're looking for things like those hard-coded secrets, ATI keys, passwords. They want to understand the app's business logic to find flaws, or maybe modify the app to bypass license checks or disable security features.
So they can steal secrets or even create modified, malicious versions of the app.
Exactly. The impact ranges from intellectual property theft to discovering new exploits that weren't obvious before. To mitigate this, developers use techniques like code obfuscation, making the decompiled code much harder to understand, like scrambling it and implementing runtime integrity checks to detect if the app's binary has been tampered with after installation.
What's truly chilling about these OWASP top 10 flaws, as you describe them, isn't just their individual danger. It sounds like they often interlock, forming causal chains, as the source material put it.
That's the critical insight, absolutely. And it's what differentiates sophisticated attacks from simple, opportunistic exploits. An attacker rarely needs to find one single perfect flaw. Often they just need to find two or three smaller ones that, when chained together, create a pathway to their goal.
Can you give an example?
Sure. An attacker might exploit M7, insufficient binary protections, to reverse engineer an app. By reading the code, they might discover an unvalidated API endpoint that's an M4 vulnerability, insufficient validation. Then, they leverage that M4 flaw to achieve their objective, perhaps bypassing authentication checks, M3, to access sensitive user data, violating M9. See the chain.
Yeah, one leads to the next.
Exactly. So a holistic defense strategy isn't just about patching individual holes. It's about breaking these potential chains at multiple points in the application's architecture and lifecycle.
And this isn't just theoretical stuff. You mentioned some stats.
Yeah, it's sobering. Data from 2023 indicates around 60% of mobile apps contain high-risk security issues. And a significant 40% of all data breaches reported that year involved mobile vulnerabilities in some way. This isn't niche, it's mainstream.
Wow. Okay, so how are attackers actually pulling this off? Beyond just finding these flaws, what sophisticated tools and tactics are they deploying to break into these apps and exploit these vulnerabilities in the real world?
The tools available to attackers today are incredibly sophisticated. And crucially, many are off the shelf, even open source, which effectively democratizes hacking to some extent. It lowers the bar for entry.
What kind of tools are we talking about?
One major category is static analysis and reverse engineering. This means examining an app's compiled code and resources without actually running the app. Tools like AppTool can decode Android resources, unpack the app, and tools like JADX or Ghidra can take the app's compiled code, what would normally be unreadable machine instructions, and reverse engineer it back into something a human developer can actually read, like Java or Smalley code.
So it's like unbaking a cake to figure out all its secret ingredients, as you said earlier.
That's a great analogy. It lets attackers easily find those hard-coded secrets we keep warning about, API keys, passwords, or map out the app's internal logic to find weaknesses, or maybe figure out exactly how to craft those direct API calls to the backend.
So they're essentially taking the app apart piece by piece, understanding its blueprints to see how it works and where the weak points or hidden treasures are.
Precisely. But it gets even more powerful with dynamic analysis and runtime manipulation. This involves analyzing an app while it's running and actively modifying its behavior in real time.
Modifying it while it runs. How?
The most prominent tool here is Frida. It's an incredibly powerful open-source dynamic instrumentation toolkit. It allows an attacker to inject custom JavaScript code directly into a running process like your banking app to monitor and critically modify its behavior on the fly.
Wow, that sounds like a game changer for attackers. What kind of things can they actually do with a tool like Frida?
With Frida, the possibilities for subversion are vast. They can bypass crucial security checks built into the app, like root or jailbreak detection, allowing them to run the app in a compromised environment without the app realizing it.
Sneaky.
Very. They can perform SSL pinning bypasses, which is absolutely crucial for that debate we flagged earlier. They can essentially intercept the app's secure TLS traffic, replacing legitimate server certificates with their own on the fly, making the app trust the attacker's connection, allowing them to decrypt and view all the supposedly secure communication.
Defeating the purpose of encryption.
Completely.
Yeah.
And they can use function hooking. This means intercepting specific functions within the app's code as they execute. Imagine intercepting the function that handles your password entry, or the one that retrieves your session token, or even the one that processes biometric authentication data. They can potentially steal the sensitive information right out of memory as it's being used.
That's deeply unsettling. This ability to hot patch an app's code while it's running really makes simple static defenses seem almost quaint, vulnerable.
It makes them incredibly vulnerable, often obsolete against a determined attacker. It highlights that developers absolutely cannot just rely on static built-in security measures alone. They need dynamic, reactive defenses because you have to assume attackers will use these kinds of sophisticated tools against your app.
Absolutely. Which leads us directly, perfectly, into one of the most hotly debated topics in the mobile security world, something called TLS pinning.
Ah, yes, the pinning debate.
Right. Protecting data in transit with TLS over HTTPS is standard, essential, baseline. We covered that. But TLS SSL pinning is an additional technique. What is it exactly?
So pinning is where an app doesn't just check if the server certificate is valid according to the usual system trust rules. Instead, the app hardcodes the specific SSL TLS certificate, or maybe just the public key, of the exact server it expects to communicate with.
So the app says, I will only talk to a server presenting this specific certificate no matter what the phone's operating system thinks.
That's the idea, yes. On the surface, it sounds like a very good, very intuitive security measure. If you know exactly who you're supposed to talk to, why not hard-code that trust? Lock it down completely.
Makes sense. So why the intense debate? Why is it so controversial?
Well, there are very strong arguments for pinning. From a pure security perspective, it undeniably mitigates certain types of certificate-based attacks. It actively prevents man-in-the-middle (MITM) attacks, where an attacker might trick the device into trusting a fraudulent certificate, perhaps one issued by a compromised or even a rogue certificate authority.
CA, which has happened, right? CA is getting compromised.
It has happened, yes. Pinning aims to bypass that entire CA trust system. It guarantees, in theory, that the app is communicating only with a known, trusted server, adding an extra layer of security. It removes dependence on that broader chain of trust for potentially dozens of third-party CAs, which can be a single point of failure.
Okay, so it provides an ultimate level of certainty about who you're talking to, bypassing the complexities of the global CA system. What then are the downsides that make it so contentious? Why are people arguing against it?
The arguments against pinning are equally significant, and they often boil down to operational reality versus theoretical security perfection. The absolute main concern is the high risk of service disruption.
How so?
Think about it. If the server certificate changes for any reason, maybe it's just a scheduled normal renewal, or the company migrates to a different certificate authority, or maybe there was a security incident requiring a quick certificate replacement, what happens? The app with the old hard-coded PIN certificate will suddenly refuse to connect. It sees the new, perfectly valid certificate, compares it to the old pinned one, finds a mismatch, and just fails.
So the app breaks for users.
Instantly. It leads to an outage for all users who haven't updated their app to a version with the new PIN. And getting users to update their apps quickly and reliably it's not guaranteed, not even close. The operational headache and the potential for massive service disruption are immense. Imagine your banking app just stops working because the bank updated its certificate.
Yeah, that would be chaos. And it's not just an operational headache, is it? You just mentioned dynamic analysis tools like Frida earlier.
Exactly. That's the other huge argument against it. As we just discussed, pinning can be relatively easily bypassed by dynamic instrumentation tools like Frida, especially on rooted or jailbroken devices. An attacker using Frida can hook the network stack or the app's validation functions and simply tell the app, yep, that pin matches, even when it doesn't. This renders pinning essentially an illusion of security against any moderately skilled, determined attacker.
So it causes operational pain and it can be bypassed anyway.
That's the crux of the argument against it. It becomes a high-maintenance overhead for developers who have to constantly manage, update, and release new versions of their apps every single time a server certificate changes, for a security benefit that might be easily circumvented by the very attackers you're trying to stop.
Is the industry moving away from it then?
Increasingly, yes. Industry leaders like Google and Cloudflare are now actively recommending against widespread certificate pinning, precisely because of these substantial operational risks and its proven bypassability. They argue the risks often outweigh the benefits for most applications.
That's fascinating. It really highlights a shift in security philosophy, doesn't it? Moving away from seemingly strong but brittle, static defenses towards more dynamic, resilient ones.
Absolutely. Sometimes what seems like the strongest, most impenetrable defense, like a hard-coded pin, can actually become a brittle single point of failure. True security often means embracing more dynamic, adaptable strategies rather than relying solely on fixed barriers that can be bypassed.
So, if not pinning, what are the best modern practices for secure communication? How do you ensure trust in transit without inviting these operational nightmares and bypass vulnerabilities?
A more robust, modern approach focuses on a layered defense that is inherently dynamic and resilient. First, rigorously use modern TLS protocols like TLS 1.3. It offers stronger encryption, better performance, and fixes flaws in older versions.
Baseline TLS 1.3. Got it.
Second, rely on proper system-level certificate validation. The operating systems themselves, iOS and Android, have sophisticated mechanisms for validating certificates, and these are actively managed and updated by the platform developers. Trust the OS to do its job well.
Okay, trust the built-in checks.
And leverage certificate transparency, CT logs. This is a public logging system where certificate authorities have to log all the certificates they issue. Apps and systems can monitor these logs to detect improperly issued or suspicious certificates much more quickly.
So transparency helps catch bad certificates faster.
Exactly. And finally, instead of static pinning, developers should consider implementing real-time threat detection mechanisms. Systems that can identify and potentially block connections originating from suspicious proxies, known malicious IP addresses, or compromised networks. It's about adapting to threats dynamically based on context, rather than relying on a single, fixed, easily circumvented check like a pin.
Okay, now let's really connect these vulnerabilities, these sophisticated exploits, and these complex debates to the real world. We need to look at some sobering incidents that have impacted millions of people. These stories really underscore that ongoing tension between privacy and utility and the real human cost when security fails.
These incidents serve as powerful, often tragic case studies. They show what happens when security fails, whether it's through a technical vulnerability, human error, or often a combination of both. They remind us the stakes are incredibly high.
We want to emphasize empathy here. These aren't just headlines. They affected real people's lives, their financial security, their privacy.
Absolutely crucial to remember.
Let's start with something that sounds like it's straight out of a spy novel, but is frighteningly real.
Pegasus spyware.
Pegasus.
Developed by the Israeli NSO Group, it's an extraordinarily sophisticated piece of spyware, sold primarily to governments, ostensibly for intelligence and law enforcement purposes.
But it became infamous for how it was deployed, right?
Highly infamous. It gained notoriety for infecting devices via what are called zero-click exploits.
Zero click, meaning no user interaction needed at all. You don't click a bad link, you don't download anything.
That's absolutely correct. No user interaction whatsoever was needed for infection in some cases. One particularly infamous example was the force entry exploit. That was CVE 2021-3860, targeting iOS. It abused a vulnerability in how iMessage processed GIF images to silently install the spyware onto the phone.
Just receiving a message could infect you. That's truly chilling.
Wow.
What could it do once installed?
Once installed, Pegasus essentially granted the operator complete total access to the target device. We're talking reading encrypted messages like Signal or WhatsApp, emails, contacts, remotely activating the camera and microphone for surveillance, tracking the device's location in real time, extracting passwords, browsing history, basically everything.
Terrifying. Who was targeted?
Revelations in 2021 by a consortium of journalists called the Pegasus Project exposed its widespread targeting. Over 50,000 phone numbers were on a list of potential targets, including those of journalists, human rights activists, lawyers, business executives, even heads of state and politicians across some 50 countries. It famously impacted associates of the murdered Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
That's an unprecedented level of surveillance, directly exploiting vulnerabilities within our mobile ecosystems for potentially nefarious purposes.
It led to significant international outcry, naturally. The U.S. government eventually blacklisted the NSO Group. Apple moved quickly to patch the specific forced entry exploit via iOS 14.8 and later introduced lockdown mode.
What was the broader impact?
This whole case ignited intense global debates about the spyware industry's dual-use nature tools, ostensibly for counterterrorism, but so easily abused for political oppression and silencing dissent. It caused a profound erosion of trust in supposedly secure, encrypted communication platforms. It also spurred the development of forensic tools like Amnesty International's MVT, the Mobile Verification Toolkit, to help individuals try and detect if their devices had been compromised by Pegasus or similar threats.
Okay, a truly stark example. Shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal. This one hit closer to home for many average users, highlighting how our digital data, even our seemingly innocuous likes, can be weaponized.
Yes, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which really blew up in 2018, vividly demonstrated this. Cambridge Analytica CA was a political consulting firm, and they managed to harvest the personal data from an estimated 87 million Facebook users.
87 million. Was it a hack?
It wasn't a direct hack of Facebook's core systems in the traditional sense. Instead, it occurred via a seemingly innocent personality quiz app called This Your Digital Life, developed by an academic researcher named Alexander Kogan.
A quiz app, like those "which character are you" things.
Exactly like that. But this app, critically, collected not just the profile data and likes of the users who took the quiz, but also harvested similar data from their network of Facebook friends, all without those friends' explicit knowledge or consent. This was a clear violation of Facebook's platform policies at the time, but the APIs allowed it.
Wow. Collecting data on friends of friends. And what was the ultimate insidious goal behind this massive data harvest?
Cambridge Analytica used this vast data set to build sophisticated psychographic profiles of millions of voters. They claimed they could predict personality traits and political leanings based on Facebook activity. They then used these profiles for highly targeted political advertising campaigns, most notably during Donald Trump's 2016 U.S. presidential campaign and also the Brexit referendum campaign in the UK.
Using personal data to manipulate political outcomes.
That was the accusation and the core of the scandal. When exposed by whistleblowers and journalists at The Guardian and The New York Times, it laid bare significant flaws in Facebook's APIs that had allowed such extensive access to friend data for years.
What was the fallout?
Immense. Facebook faced a staggering $5 billion fine from the U.S. Federal Trade Commission, FTC, for privacy violations. Cambridge Analytica ultimately declared bankruptcy and devolved. And Meta, Facebook's parent company, eventually settled a related class action lawsuit for $725 million in late 2022.
Did it lead to changes?
Oh, yes. It directly sparked much more vigorous enforcement of data privacy regulations like the GDPR in Europe. It prompted widespread app review reforms across the tech industry, severely limiting the data third-party apps could access. And it really highlighted what many called consent illusions in social media apps where users didn't truly understand what data they were giving away. It revealed the long-term, profound effects this could have on privacy norms and even democratic processes.
Okay, now let's turn to T-Mobile. A major telecom giant, huge customer base, but unfortunately, they've suffered multiple large-scale data breaches. The 2021 and 2023 incidents really hammer home the immense danger of unsecured or leaky APIs, which you mentioned earlier.
Absolutely. These are textbook examples of API insecurity leading to massive breaches. The 2021 T-Mobile breach saw hackers exploit API vulnerabilities. The specifics weren't fully detailed publicly, but involved accessing testing environments to gain unauthorized access to T-Mobile servers. They ultimately downloaded a trove of sensitive data on roughly 54 million current, former, and prospective customers.
What kind of data?
Really sensitive stuff. Names, addresses, dates of birth, social security numbers, driver's license information, and unique device identifiers like IMEI and MSI numbers. Even encrypted PINs are accessed, though T-Mobile said the encryption wasn't broken.
Exposure of IMEI numbers sounds particularly bad for mobile users.
It is. That kind of information can be used to facilitate highly targeted SIM swapping attacks, where attackers trick the carrier into transferring your phone number to their device, letting them intercept calls, texts, and potentially bypass two-factor authentication. This incident alone resulted in T-Mobile agreeing to a substantial $350 million settlement for a class action lawsuit, plus committing $150 million to data security upgrades.
A huge cost. And then, regrettably, it happened again in 2023. It wasn't a one-off.
No, alarmingly. In the 2023 breach, T-Mobile reported that a bad actor exploited a single insecure API. The company stated this API lacked proper access controls and potentially rate limiting. This allowed the attacker to systematically query the API and obtain basic customer account information for around 37 million customers.
What kind of info this time? SSN scam?
Thankfully, no SSNs or financial data this time, according to T-Mobile. It was more like names, billing addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, dates of birth, and T-Mobile account numbers. Still sensitive, still useful for phishing and fraud.
And how long did this go on?
What's particularly concerning about the 2023 breach is that the data leakage apparently lasted for over a month, from late November 2022 until early January 2023, before T-Mobile detected and stopped it. This strongly suggests that their monitoring systems for API traffic and unusual activity were inadequate at the time.
A month of data leakage. Wow.
These repeated incidents just underscore the critical importance of carrier app security and the immense systemic risk posed by unsecured APIs, especially when they handle such vast amounts of sensitive customer data. They hammer home the absolute need for granular access controls, robust rate limiting to prevent mass data scraping, and sophisticated, real-time API traffic monitoring to detect and prevent such exfiltration before it affects tens of millions of people.
That's a powerful reminder of how much sensitive data a single overlooked API can expose. Now, what about the Moviet supply chain attack from 2023? That sounds like it had incredibly far-reaching consequences across many industries, not just mobile.
This was indeed a massive, pervasive supply chain attack with global repercussions. It originated from a zero-day SQL injection vulnerability, that's CVE 2023-34362, discovered in Progress Software's Moviet transfer tool.
What is Moviet transfer?
It's a widely used software application for secure managed file transfer. Lots of organizations across finance, healthcare, government, tech. They use it to securely exchange large files, often integrating it into their core business processes, including mobile workflows.
Okay, so a popular tool had a flaw. Who exploited it?
The notorious Clop ransomware group relentlessly exploited this zero-day vulnerability before a patch was available. They used it to infiltrate the systems of organizations using Moviet and steal vast amounts of data. Estimates suggest over 2,000 organizations were impacted worldwide, affecting the personal data of more than 60 million individuals. Victims included major names like British Airways, the BBC, Shell Oil, state governments in the U.S., universities. This list is huge.
And how did that ripple into the mobile app world specifically, given its broad impact on back-end systems?
For mobile apps, the implications were significant because many organizations integrate tools like Movid for back-end data synchronization. Think about HR portals, access via mobile apps, customer relationship management, CRM systems that sync data used by mobile sales teams, or supply chain logistics apps. Any mobile app that relied on or exchanged data with a compromised Moviet instance faced potential exposure of sensitive user data, especially personally identifiable information, PII.
So the stolen data could then be used against mobile users.
Exactly. This could directly lead to highly targeted phishing attacks, credential stuffing attempts against other accounts using stolen passwords, or other forms of fraud targeting users via their compromised mobile accounts or related services. The incident starkly highlighted the widespread impact of third-party risks embedded within app dependencies and back-end infrastructure. It sparked urgent calls, especially in regulatory circles, for things like software bill of materials, SBO mandates.
SBMs, like an ingredients list for software.
Precisely. The idea is that developers would need to list all the components, including third-party libraries like Moviet, within their software. This increases transparency and helps organizations quickly identify if they're affected when a vulnerability is found in a component. Victims of the Moviet breach endured spam, targeted phishing, and the ongoing risk of identity theft.
Okay, another widespread issue. Now, the Equifax breach from 2017, that was primarily a web-based attack on a major credit bureau, hugely damaging. But did it have profound, long-lasting mobile implications too?
It absolutely did, even though the initial breach vector wasn't mobile. The credit bureau Equifax suffered a truly catastrophic breach. The cause: an unpatched vulnerability in the Apache Struts web application framework that was CVE 2017-5638. Attackers exploited this known, patchable flaw to gain access and ultimately expose the incredibly sensitive personal and financial records of 147 million Americans.
147 million, including SSNs, birth dates.
Yes, social security numbers, birth dates, addresses, some driver's license numbers, even credit card numbers for a smaller subset. And, horrifyingly, the attackers systematically exfiltrated data for 76 days before Equifax detected the breach.
76 days. So how did this web breach fuel mobile problems?
While the initial attack wasn't directly on a mobile app, the sheer volume and sensitivity of the stolen data profoundly fueled subsequent mobile identity theft on a massive scale. That stolen data, particularly SSNs, birth dates, addresses, became prime fodder for criminals engaging in sophisticated SIM swapping attacks, allowing them to take over victims' phone numbers. It also enabled widespread fraudulent activity within banking and financial apps, where attackers could use the stolen information to answer security questions, impersonate victims, open new accounts, or access existing ones.
So the stolen data became the key to unlock mobile financial doors.
Exactly. Equifax's own mobile services were also indirectly affected. As millions of concerned users flocked to Equifax's apps and website to check their credit reports and freeze their credit, they became prime targets for highly convincing phishing attacks related to the breach, using details stolen in the breach.
A vicious cycle.
Completely. The incident led to Equifax eventually agreeing to a settlement fund of at least $425 million. More broadly, it exposed systemic risks related to slow or inadequate patch management within large organizations handling critical data. It showed how interconnected our digital ecosystems are and how a failure in one area can cascade outwards. Victims face years of dealing with fraud alerts, credit freezes, and the constant worry of identity theft.
Finally, let's look at two more recent sobering cases that dramatically illustrate that dangerous synergy between human error and technical failure. Uber in 2022 and Cash App in 2022. These aren't just tech stories, they feel like human stories of what can go wrong.
They are truly critical examples, showing how even supposedly robust systems can be circumvented when the human element comes into play. The Uber data breach in September 2022, it began with a surprisingly simple first step. A hacker apparently purchased stolen corporate login credentials for an Uber contractor on the dark web.
So stolen password was
Yeah.
the entry point. Did Uber not have MFA?
They did. Uber had multi-factor authentication enabled. But the attacker employed a clever and frankly annoying social engineering tactic called MFA fatigue or MFA bombing. They relentlessly spammed the contractor's phone with push notifications requesting MFA approval over and over again, likely for over an hour.
Just wearing the person down.
Exactly. Then the attacker contacted the contractor via WhatsApp, impersonating someone from Uber's IT support, claiming there was an issue and telling them to approve the MFA request to fix it. The exhausted, likely confused contractor eventually approved one.
Wow, social engineering bypassing MFA. What happened then?
Once inside Uber's network, the attackers started exploring, and they made a truly shocking discovery. They found hard-coded administrative credentials for Uber's Privileged Access Management, PM system basically. Superuser access stored within some PowerShell scripts located on a network share accessible to many employees.
Hard-coded admin passwords just sitting in a script.
Unbelievably, yes. This allowed the attacker to escalate their privileges dramatically, gaining access to numerous critical internal systems across Uber's infrastructure, including their Slack, G Suite, AWS console, and HackerOne bug bounty program dashboard.
That's a truly insidious attack, exploiting both human vulnerability to social engineering fatigue and a glaring fundamental configuration flaw, hard-coded secrets again. Now, what about the Cash App incident around the same time?
The Cash App data breach, reported in April 2022, was an equally concerning but different kind of human failure, an insider threat. A former employee of Block, Inc., Cash App's parent company, apparently accessed and downloaded sensitive internal financial reports containing customer data after their employment had already been terminated.
After they left the company. How?
It was a direct, glaring result of a failure in Block's offboarding procedures. They failed to immediately and fully revoke that former employee's access privileges upon their departure. This allowed the ex-employee to download reports containing full names and brokerage account numbers for about 8.2 million U.S. customers, plus some brokerage portfolio information for a subset.
So in both cases, Uber and Cash App, you have human factors fatigue, social engineering tricks, or a failure to follow basic security protocols like revoking access directly amplifying technical weaknesses or oversight.
Precisely. These incidents highlight that dangerous synergy. Even the most robust technical systems, like MFA, can potentially be circumvented by sophisticated social engineering targeting the human user. And fundamental misconfigurations like hard-coded credentials, overly broad access permissions, or inadequate offboarding procedures massively amplify the impact of human lapses, turning them into potentially catastrophic security failures.
What are the consequences for businesses in these cases?
The business impacts are severe and far-reaching. Massive legal penalties, huge regulatory fines like T-Mobile's, extensive class action lawsuits like Meta's and Equifax's, and immense, long-lasting reputational damage. T-Mobile's $350 million settlement and Block, Inc., facing a shareholder lawsuit over the Cash App breach are stark reminders of the direct financial and legal fallout.
Are there common patterns across all these incidents we've discussed?
Definitely. Looking across these major breaches, common patterns emerged repeatedly. Unpatched vulnerabilities, like in Equifax or Moviate, remain a huge factor. Estimates suggest they account for maybe 60% of breaches overall. API flaws, as seen clearly with T-Mobile, are critical, perhaps involved in 30% or more. And supply chain weaknesses like Moviate are a growing concern, maybe 20%. The inescapable conclusion is that cybersecurity is not just an IT problem anymore. It is a core business risk, requiring a strategic, proactive, and holistic approach from every single level of an organization, from the boardroom down to individual developers and employees.
Okay, so we've walked through the intricate architecture of apps, the powerful defenses built into our devices, the common flaws that keep cropping up, and the very real-world, often devastating consequences when things go wrong. What does this all mean for the future? How do we actually build true resilience in such a dynamic, constantly evolving threat landscape?
I think the single most important takeaway, the fundamental shift in mindset that's required, is this. Security absolutely must be integral from the very beginning. It cannot be an afterthought. This is what the industry calls shifting left.
Shifting left, meaning
Sim-
earlier in the process.
Exactly. Integrating security considerations and practices into every single phase of the software development lifecycle, right from day one, from the initial idea.
So you're building security in rather than trying to bolt it on or patch it up later, which sounds like an expensive, never-ending game of whack-a-mole.
That's precisely the idea. It's about proactive prevention, not just reactive cleanup. This involves crucial steps like threat modeling right at the design stage.
Threat modeling, what's that?
It's where you essentially try to think like a hacker before you even start writing the code. You brainstorm potential attack vectors, identify where vulnerabilities might realistically emerge in your proposed design, and then you address them architecturally in the design phase itself before they get built.
Smart. Thinking ahead.
Then, throughout development, it's about consistently implementing secure coding practices, conducting regular, rigorous code reviews, both automated and manual, and using automated security testing tools continuously throughout development, testing, and even after release. It's about catching potential issues early when they're cheapest and easiest to fix, rather than waiting for an attacker to find them after the app is live and handling sensitive user data.
Okay, shift left, build security in. And for applications that are already out there or for new ones being built, we need to constantly revisit that concept of defense in depth, right? Building multiple overlapping layers of protection.
Absolutely essential. A truly resilient application relies on multiple robust security controls, strategically placed across different layers of its operation. Think layers of that castle.
What are those key layers again?
At the application layer itself, you need to protect the app binary, the code package, from reverse engineering and tampering. Use techniques like code obfuscation and implement runtime integrity checks to detect if the app has been modified.
Okay, protect the app itself.
Then, at the device layer, leverage and properly implement those native OS security features. We talked about the Android key store, the iOS keychain, and secure enclave. Integrate robust root or jailbreak detection to understand if the app is running in a potentially hostile environment.
So the app is protecting itself, and the device OS is helping protect the app. What about data moving between them or out to the cloud?
That's the critical network layer. All communication carrying sensitive data must be encrypted end-to-end using modern TLS protocols like TLS 1.3, ensuring things like perfect forward secrecy. We also emphasize using certificate transparency logs for monitoring and potentially implementing that real-time threat detection we discussed, identifying suspicious proxies or compromised networks, rather than solely relying on static pinning given its downsides.
Dynamic network protection. And the backend.
And finally, arguably most importantly sometimes, the backend layer. This is paramount. Your backend APIs and servers must be secured with granular, least privilege access controls. Implement intelligent rate limiting to prevent large-scale data scraping or brute force attacks, and maintain robust logging and real-time monitoring of all API traffic to detect anomalies and potential attacks as they happen.
The T-Mobile breaches really highlight that back-end API security.
They are a stark, repeated reminder of how a single insecure API endpoint, if not properly secured and monitored, can potentially expose millions of customers, even if other layers of defense are in place.
It really is like building that medieval castle. Multiple walls, moats, guards at every gate, not just one strong, but potentially vulnerable main gate. Each layer provides a failsafe if another is breached, making it exponentially harder for attackers.
That's a perfect analogy, and as the Uber and Cash App incident so tragically showed us, Even the most robust technical defenses, the best castles, can potentially be circumvented if the human element isn't properly addressed.
Ah, yes, the human firewall. That sounds incredibly important, maybe the hardest part.
It's certainly critical and, yes, challenging. A proactive defense strategy must treat employees, and indeed users themselves to some extent, as a critical security layer, not just a potential vulnerability.
How do you do that?
It requires regular, targeted security awareness training. And crucially, we're not talking about generic, once-a-year, click-through PowerPoint lectures that everyone ignores.
Right, the boring compliance training.
Exactly. We need focused, engaging, scenario-based training that addresses real-world tactics attackers are using now. Things like sophisticated social engineering, modern phishing techniques, and critically, recognizing and resisting MFA fatigue attacks like the one Uber experienced. Equipping people with knowledge, awareness, and critical thinking skills helps them recognize and resist these attacks, effectively turning the entire workforce into an active, intelligent line of defense.
Empowering people, not just blaming them. Okay, so looking even further ahead now, the threat landscape isn't standing still either, is it? We hear a lot about AI, quantum computing. How do these emerging technologies shape the future of mobile security?
You're right, the mobile security landscape is in continuous, rapid evolution. It never stops. Attackers are already leveraging AI, for example, to craft incredibly sophisticated, personalized phishing emails and messages, making them almost indistinguishable from legitimate communications. AI could also be used to automate vulnerability discovery.
Scary. And quantum.
And looking further out, yes, the specter of fault-tolerant quantum computers looms large over our current public key encryption methods, like RSA and ECC, which underpin much of TLS and secure communication today. A powerful enough quantum computer could theoretically break this encryption, rendering much of our secure communication vulnerable.
So what's the path forward?
Developers must continue to prioritize secure by design principles. They need to stay educated and leverage evolving tools like automated security testing platforms like OWASP Zappy or commercial alternatives integrated into their development pipelines. And research into quantum-resistant cryptography is already well underway, with standardization efforts beginning. We'll need to transition to new cryptographic algorithms over the coming decade.
It sounds like a constant arms race. What then can individual users like our listeners do in this constantly accelerating environment? What's our role in protecting ourselves?
You, the user, absolutely have a powerful role to play in mitigating your personal risk. Be proactive. Regularly manage and review your app permissions. Does that flashlight app really need access to your contacts and microphone? Probably not. Revoke unnecessary permissions.
Good point. Keep things updated.
Always. Keep your apps and your device's operating system updated promptly. These updates frequently contain critical security patches that fix known vulnerabilities attackers might exploit. Don't ignore those update notifications.
Okay, updates are key. Anything else?
Consider utilizing tools like reputable VPNs, virtual private networks, for added network security, especially when you're connecting to untrusted public Wi-Fi networks in cafes or airports. Be cautious about links and attachments in emails and messages, even if they seem legitimate. Phishing is rampant. Use strong, unique passwords for different accounts and enable MFA wherever it's offered.
So basic digital hygiene is still fundamental.
It really is. Ultimately, the key to building collective resilience in this complex space lies in collaborative ecosystems. OS makers like Apple and Google, app developers, independent security researchers finding flaws, and even regulators pushing for better standards. Everyone needs to work together, share information, and adapt quickly to stay ahead, or at least keep pace with the evolving threats.
That collaborative effort really does feel essential. We're all interconnected in this digital world, like it or not. Hashtag tag tag outro. And that brings us to the end of another deep delve. Wow, that was a lot to cover. Today, we've journeyed through the intricate, often hidden architecture of mobile applications.
From client-server models to layered designs.
Explore the robust security features built right into your devices that Fort Rock.
The secure enclave, Android key store, sandboxing.
Yeah. We dissected the most common, dangerous vulnerabilities from the OWASP Top 10.
Insecure storage, bad authentication, leaky communication.
Navigated that contentious but important debate around TLS pinning.
Security versus operational reality, always a fun one.
And unpacked some truly sobering real-world security incidents like Pegasus, Cambridge Analytica, MovieIt, and the repeated T-Mobile breaches.
Those stories really drive home the impact.
So hopefully you now have a significantly deeper understanding of the layers of protection and the layers of risk involved in your mobile life and the constant dynamic dance between innovation and security that defines our digital world.
Absolutely. For you, the listener, we hope this translates into a heightened awareness. Maybe think a bit more critically about the apps you use and the permissions you grant. Consider what you can personally do. Regular reviewing those app permissions, definitely keeping your apps and operating system updated, and perhaps considering tools like VPNs for added network security, especially on public networks.
Absolutely. Simple steps can make a difference. So as you continue to interact with your digital world today, tomorrow, what new digital habit or maybe what critical app interaction will you examine with a fresh, security-minded perspective after today's deep dive? What small change might you make starting today to bolster your own digital defenses and better safeguard your pocket-sized digital life? We encourage you to reflect on that.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of mobile app security. Stay aware, stay safe out there.
And we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.